Welcome back to Totally Clutch, the Clutch Businesses podcast and blog. Today's episode might be a little controversial. My guest and I might end up convincing you that the assistant or the 10-person team that you've been dreaming about may not solve your business woes. I'm Angie Veman with Clutch Businesses, and our guest today found all of the things that our clients find: more time, more energy, greater fulfillment. And she found it all on her own and in a pretty unconventional way. So Janis Isaman is the owner of My Body Couture, which is a one-on-one private health studio where she helps people, move better, feel better, and live better. Welcome to the show, Janis.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So do you want to give us, some insight, some background about you and what you're up to?
Sure. I am a movement specialist, which means that I work with primarily type A personalities to help them feel better in their body. So the major point at which most people come to see me is when they have pain in their body. So that is neck ache, backache, shoulders hurt, knees hurt, hips hurt, things like that. And most of these folks have other things they want to do in their life. It's not primarily driven by a desire to be fit per se. It's a desire to be able to get off an airplane without your back hurting. It's a desire to be able to go work on your hobby. It's a desire to just get on with the things in your life.
That's really great. And I think that's a really important distinction, right? There's people that are fitness oriented, and then there are people that are just trying to live a normal life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We do definitely work with people that have specific fitness goals, such as running marathon, et cetera. So it's not necessarily just sedentary folks, but most people who are really driven to be fit are already working out at a gym. So that's not my core audience. My core audience is people that just want to feel better and be normal.
That how many classes? Okay, are we back?
I can see it. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Could you hear me?
I could not hear you. Sorry.
Okay. So that's great. I guess I'm curious, I had mentioned that you found a whole lot more fulfillment in your work life, and then that trickled into your personal life. And so I'm wondering if you can paint a picture for us of what your studio looked like when you first opened it. So how many staff you had, how many classes you were offering, maybe how many classes you were even teaching.
That's a great question. I think I had about 15 classes outside the studio. So like a good super type A entrepreneur, I was like, I'm opening the business, but I just want to make sure that I have enough money to pay the bills. So I had an outside job, and PS, also a very small child at that point. Yeah. But I had something like 15 hours outside of the studio. And so while some of that did feed studio business, I really had two complete jobs. So what is in the fitness industry, 20 hours a week is considered a full-time load, 15 to 20. So I had literally two full loads. Originally, my intention was private studios that could be replicated. So I chose a small space. My space is only 613 square feet, and it has two private rooms. So it was perfect space. But I named my studio My Body Couture by Janis Isaman because my whole intention was to create a chain. And possibly with the idea that there could be other brands, or that there would be certainly other locations.
Okay. Yeah, so you did it. You threw yourself right into it. Yes. And then what does your studio look like today?
It's still 613 square feet. It's still named the same thing. So my name hasn't been removed from the sticker on the door. But I no longer want to create a multi-studio model. I do not want to do that anymore. I do not want to have spin-off brands, and I do not want to have staff anymore. So the second studio room is now for product. I am a Canadian distributor for a product called Yamada Body Rolling, and I sell that product. I teach that technique. I'm an instructor trainer, so I teach teachers how to teach that technique. And all of the warehousing is done out of that second room, which was originally actually a workout studio. So I got rid of staff completely, and I completely ripped up any business plan that involved opening new locations.
Yeah. Okay. That's a huge, huge step. So what does that look like then in your life now? So that, I guess, a picture in your personal life, a picture of the before and the after.
Well, the before was having 2 jobs, and as already mentioned, 15 to 20 hours a week is seen as a full-time fitness job. And it's because we bill that out, but like a lawyer doing a bill out, there is prep time before and after. You have to clean the floor, and you have to do paperwork, and you have to do customer service, and you have to do billing, etc. So that 15 hours balloons. And so I no longer work outside of the studio. And what I did a few years ago, I was actually getting quite burnt out. So I was just working all the time. I would go into my studio, have this full-time load. I managed staff, etc. And then I would come home and try to do all of the paperwork and all of the things that weren't getting done during the day. I would answer emails and I would respond to client texts. And clients actually, it's normal. I exist as part of their personal life. I'm not part of their professional network. So they would text me and email me at nighttime and on the weekends. So I would come home and literally have a second shift. I had a second shift personally with a child, and I had a second shift with my work. And I was literally burning out. Like, this was not a sustainable model in any way. So I made some very significant changes. And those changes really allowed me to take back the night on my personal life. I scaled back. I changed my work hours where I do respond to clients. I got rid of the staff. I got rid of contractors. I got rid of all of that. I simplified and actually just took it back to me as the brand, me as the instructor. And then I diversified in other ways. So certainly in my business, we are always given the idea that the only way to grow is to get staff. So you get more rooms in a facility, you get more humans working for you, and that's how you grow. And I thought that that was true. The missing part of that conversation was how much maintenance and how much work those items are. So having a second room takes time. There's an idea to have more real estate, rent it out. Well, that takes a lot of time. It takes coordinating people. It takes people management. And I actually like people. But nowhere in that equation, does anybody talk about what the return on that time is going to be. And that's where I really was like, I don't enjoy it. And B, the return per hour just isn't there. So when I actually looked at my numbers from what my staff was actually earning for an hour of my time, instead of me billing out clients, I was giving staff my time, and that return was way less. So per hour, it was way, way, way less. And then I fell into the model of that we're also given, which is we'll hire an assistant and outsource kind of all your tasking and outsource social media, etc. That didn't actually work. I have a 613 square foot studio. So I'm not running a major corporate chain. So I had a virtual assistant experience that, just wasn't great. I was being billed out for hours that weren't being completed. Tasks weren't being done. I was billed out for time, for example, checking and responding to emails while I was away doing a training, and nobody logged into my emails, and there was no record at all of any emails being sent. And yet I was so, not to be suspicious, but the virtual assistant world really didn't work out for me, just because I think that person's off site and we can get a bill for all of this out, all of these hours that have supposedly been accrued, but there's no evidence in my case of that work ever being done. And it didn't actually take any of the tasks off my list.
Right.
And the second
and
thing
maybe added some to it.
It absolutely did. Because then I was stressed out because I didn't know how to even address this person and how to tackle kind of, where are the hours that I've been billed for? Because when I look through my email, I literally don't recognize a single email that I didn't personally send. So, but it takes, again, staff management time. And I also noticed just that it wasn't in my wheelhouse of joy. So there are things that I love to do. I do love writing. I love marketing. I actually really like doing my own social media. And that one was one that people say outsource, outsource, outsource. But when I outsourced it, which I've done a couple of times, it looks very generic.
Yeah.
And I still have to provide content of images of me or writing I have done. And so again, I looked at that and I'm like, well, I'm paying money to send somebody pictures and send somebody text and they compile it and put it there. But by the time I actually send the person the stuff, I might as well put it up, and then at least it speaks of me, it speaks of my brand, it speaks of my passion for doing it, and it's not generic. So you can tell which ones I put up versus which ones I did not put up.
Yeah. I mean, it's risky, right? With a boutique brand like you have, which is pretty high touch, I would imagine, with your clients. There's a lot of risk in outsourcing anything. I mean, one week of emails not being answered by a virtual assistant while you're out of town, that can be crippling for a business, for a boutique style business. So, and even with, marketing, it's like you almost have to get to a certain threshold of where you're handing off all of the marketing. So you're not, which it costs a lot of money, right? But then you're not responsible for coming up with the content and just having somebody format it, but you've then hired somebody that's really strategically driving your marketing efforts. And that's not a small fee.
It's not a small fee. And so I really got to the point where I realized that if that was the direction that I was going to grow in, I would have to expand exponentially. So I would have to give up my practice as a practitioner and basically oversee 11 or 12 staff, not 2 or 3. Yeah. And so that was a big moment where I just said, I'm actually giving up my billable revenue to oversee staff who just on the face of it are earning a lot less than I am per hour because I have to pay them, and fairly so, right?
Yeah. Right.
But they are not generating collectively as much as I do in that same amount of time. So, where is my passion? Is it in staff management, or is it in doing my business with my clients and then doing a subset of, my own marketing? But to your point, business to business marketing, sales, all of that stuff costs a ton of money. So again, where is that dividing line where I should be doing it myself versus outsourcing?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing, I mean, I'm not a marketing person, but I know that it's something that so many businesses struggle with. But so even if you're spending a lot of money, there still is a risk involved in finding the right company for you. And I mean, even if you're paying somebody $20,000, that doesn't mean that they're doing $20,000 worth of work all the time. I mean, I'm not here to trash talk marketing agencies or anything like that, but there are some that are not, it's a challenge to get the value out of them in a lot of ways. So it's almost like hiring a staff member, right? Like sometimes you get really lucky and sometimes it's just not a fit.
Yeah. I think that you have to, especially as a smaller firm, you have to really look at the 1 or 2 things that really, really add value, because I could outsource a ton of other things, but at the end of the day, I'm actually spending the time on the 1 or 2 things that are really producing clients, gathering those connections. For me, it's actually always been Facebook. So everybody kind of says Instagram, Instagram, Instagram. That's never really been kind of where I've gotten a lot of clients. So I am present on Instagram, but it can be a little bit hit and miss. So for me to turn around and pay for Instagram, which is a source that I've rarely, if ever, gotten a client from and made that new connection, I could do that, just have a presence there, but that doesn't make sense. So instead, I'd rather just have tracks of 4 months at a time where I'm not on it at all, but always present on Instagram.
Yeah. Or on Facebook.
Oh, I'm sorry, on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I know that I can personally do a daily Facebook post and I can do a good job of it. So instead of outsourcing the whole thing and saying, okay, now it's all going to be done, when I'm doing it myself, I can just focus on that one thing that I know actually creates that result.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like, I mean, that's kind of the theme, right? Like you identified all of those places in your business and it brought you to this really fulfilling kind of juicy spot where it didn't mean building an empire. It meant just doing what you love and what truly fulfills you, which is amazing. So when you figured that out, when you started to see the signs of that, did you jump into it right away, or did you give it some time to breathe and kind of get comfortable?
I think we lost connection again.
Okay, I'm actually here.
Oh, okay. Can you ask
okay
again, please?
There we go. Hey.
Okay. I can see you. Yes.
Okay.
Can you just ask the question again, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, once you identified or once you started to see the signs of this new direction, did you jump into it right away, or did you give it some time to breathe and give it some time to get comfortable with it?
That was a very hard one. It was hard to get rid of staff. That's not an easy thing for me because I actually like the people that I hire. And so that was a tough one because it almost is like breaking up. I mean, it's breaking up a relationship.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who takes that very easily. So that was one thing. But then I think a bigger matter was just getting comfortable with the idea that there was another way to do things. So the common industry norm for my industry, basically all health businesses, are get more space, get more staff, get more space, get more staff, get more space, get more staff. And I had to get that script out of my head. And I had to look at a totally different model. And the only name that kept popping into my head was Jillian Michaels. And now what she does is I do. But it was actually a barrier for me to think, how could I do that? How could I get my face out there, brand myself? It actually feels very narcissistic, honestly. But to actually get to that place where I'm like, I can do that, and I can do podcasts, and I can write, and I can sell product, and I can become a teacher trainer, and I can do these other pieces that are very authentic to me, but where I'm in the brand, it's not nameless, faceless staff. Yeah. Actually took some time to kind of personally work through.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And so I guess I'm curious then, given that that's the normal model, right, is more, whatever, more space, more classes, more teachers, whatever it is, what's your relationship like, or how is your model received now because I mean, you're obviously a really connected person in the industry that you're in. And so I'm curious how it's received with the other studio owners or your other peers, I guess.
That's a good question. I actually have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, it's interesting because I did have that sort of script in my head, but it wasn't really coming from the collection of local studio owners or anything like that. Actually, interestingly, when I opened my studio, I was from another city and I moved to the city and opened it.
Okay.
So I didn't do maybe what I should have done, which is to do a deep dive in terms of what is everybody else charging? What does their model look like? I didn't do that. I just kind of forged ahead. So I actually don't have a lot of feedback on what they kind of think of that model. The only thing I have thought of during COVID is, thank goodness I do have that model because I am inherently socially distanced. I'm inherently set up to work with people one-on-one. When I made that switch, I looked at other revenue streams, because other revenue streams can come in the form of human beings, but they can also come in the form of, as already mentioned, writing, products, teacher trainings, etc. So I already had that diversification. So what I have seen, because I'm part of studio owners groups on Facebook, is that people are looking to adapt more of that model. So I had already wandered down that path, and the way that I had priced was already different. It wasn't a membership-based model, and at this particular moment in history, a membership-based model isn't working very well.
Yeah.
So none of it has been about what people think of me. I'm just interested that the whole industry has kind of taken a step in that direction.
Yeah, and I think it'll continue to shift. And I do think it's also really interesting to point out, so we haven't really been focused on this, but so you were stepping away from more, bigger, but I also think that you were doing more, but not focused and centralized in one direction, right? So you were doing more, but it was more of what lights you up. So more writing, more photography, more, all of those things. And so it takes on that kind of multi-passionate entrepreneurship, where I think more and more people are opening to that idea, but I still think that there's a huge segment of the population, the majority of the population, that feels like you got to line up with one thing. When you get to college, you line up with one thing and you keep doing that until the very end. And there's so many people now that are, or I should say, there's more and more people that are taking a step back, just like you did, and saying, you know what, here are all of the gifts that I bring to the world. So why do I only have to express this one?
Correct.
And I can express all of them really in a meaningful way to me, but also to the community that I'm serving with it.
Absolutely. And I think what's really fun for me now is I think of it almost like a DJ deck, where I can turn up one dial, I can turn down one dial.
Totally.
And I do that constantly. And I can shift and evolve with my own passions and my own interests and my own client base. And frankly, it doesn't impact sort of my staff. It doesn't impact anybody except me and my child, because I can spin off in one direction. I can follow that lead. I can follow that passion or interest for a bit, and then I can just turn that dial down and dial the other piece up. So this summers are always a little bit of a downtime and a dip in my private client business, but that's when I'm focusing more on content creation and marketing and teacher trainings, things like that. And then in the fall, those will actually shift. So it's really fun for me, because it almost feels like I can create a new job all the time.
Yeah.
And then the second piece is, interestingly, my admin load has dropped.
Yeah.
So by actually creating that kind of job for myself, where I'm dialing up and dialing down, that need for the virtual assistant and that need for all of those pieces that were helping me out actually have dropped. So sometimes I think that we think that our needs for help are really, really strong. But if we actually just change what we're doing in the first place, maybe we don't actually need that much help.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I'm going to out myself as a virtual assistant skeptic in this, because I think, so and that's not to say that nobody should ever use them. I think there's obviously value at times, and there are some companies where it makes so much sense.
Absolutely.
But I think oftentimes they're used to cover up inefficiencies. And there's so many programs now, so many software platforms that will automate those things that you're hiring somebody to do. And there's no human error. You can guarantee it's going to get done to a certain extent, right? I know that, AI isn't perfect, but so yeah, I'm totally on board with that. And I think that's one thing that I just want to draw attention to for anybody listening, is that I think that I'm actually reading The E-Myth right now. I don't know if you've ever read it, but he talks about, the three different parts of entrepreneurs: the technician, the manager, and then the actual entrepreneur. And he talks about it kind of like, so you get into business and you're the technician at that point. And then you have to transition into this managerial thing and let go of that. And he talks about it like a backslide. If you end up, what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they get into the managerial and the entrepreneurial roles, and they're like, I can't do it. These people aren't doing the work for me that I need them, like there's panic. And so they're like, I'm just going to do it. And they take it all back. And he talks about that kind of negatively, like that's a backslide, that you're not growing. And I think so that I want to point out to anybody listening that that's the exact opposite of what you've chosen to do. I mean, you've got more time, more personal time.
Yeah,
you're doing things that are more fulfilling, and you're making more money doing it. So it's not like,
true.
Yeah.
So I'm not following the traditional pathway that we are taught in our culture and society of start the business, get more space, hire more staff, outsource. The other thing that I actually did not find to be true, it just was not in my life, was hire somebody, outsource it, and then you'll have time to generate revenue. I don't know what I did with that time, but there was no extra revenue.
That wasn't it.
And I think it's partly, honestly, when you are doing it yourself, you really look at, okay, I don't even need to be doing this. Like it just can be taken off the table. If you're outsourcing it and it's, $15 an hour or whatever, maybe you think it does need to be done. Yeah. There's an equal chance that it actually does not ever need to be done.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, we should probably wrap up, but is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with that we haven't gone over?
I just think go with your own gut in terms of how you want to run a business. So just because somebody tells you that the way to generate revenue is more staff, that's not necessarily true. And I think it really comes down to, is that the way that you want to spend your time? So I didn't open a business to manage staff. Again, love people, but that wasn't why I opened the business. So I think that you should look at why you opened the business and really see what you can kind of almost Marie Kondo out of there. So just focus on the things that bring you joy and give the rest to charity.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I think this was incredible insight, and I hope that anybody listening is able to see that there are so many different ways for you to be successful in your business and for you to generate revenue and make and create the business that you want and really take it to heart. So thank you so much, Janis. I really appreciate it. And for anybody that's interested in finding out more about Janis's work, you can visit mybodycouture.com. And it works with people both in person and online. So, definitely reach out.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me today. It was great talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Janis. And thank you all for listening. And remember that I believe in you and I believe in your business.